Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how I built this 45-inch custom lake trout rod out of an 8-foot glass blank. I got all my components from Mudhole. I'm going to link them down here in the description. Check it out if you're interested. I think overall I paid about 46 bucks for this rod, head to toe, not including the reel. I am going to list out how I set my guides up if you're interested. I'm also going to list the exact sizing of the guides, and then if you stay tuned late enough, you can watch it and check out how I actually set it up and built it. So if you're interested in learning how to build it, there you go. If not, at least you can grab the specs if you're interested. This rod is a beast. It's pretty heavy. Unfortunately, I did not catch any fish with it, but you can check it out in my intro, me using it. All right, so I just got done cutting this blank. It's at 45 inches now, which is the length I want it. For the next step, we're making the handle. So before we do that part, we have to find the spine, which is going to be how we determine where we're laying the guides out. So to find the spine, you put the butt on something hard, but you put your hand up on the rod tip, rod at about a 45-degree angle, and then you're just going to rotate the blank until sometimes you'll get it to jump. If it's a more pronounced spine, right about here, it's not wanting to move. It wants to stay in this position. And if you can see where that's at, so I've got this pressure here, facing up is where the point is. That point is going to be where you want to put the guide. So the spine's on the back. So lining the guides up with that line is going to be key. And to do the handle, you want the reel seat in line with that. So we are now going to move on. The handle is consisted of, depending on which type of handle, a couple things. This particular one, we're going to go rear grip, and it does have the butt cover on the end. Little cap actually goes that way, right here. It looks something like that. So this is the rear grip. We've got the reel seat and the foregrip. So that's what your handle looks like before you glue it on. As you can see specifically with the reel seat here, and then the foregrip, just an example, these diameters do not match up to the butt of the blank. So there's a couple things we have to do. With the cork, we have to ream it out using a cork reamer to match the diameter of this blank. And with the seat, we have to tape and make our own arbors, so that way when we epoxy the handle, it can go on. It's a rear cork grip, and we have to make it fit around that thickness. So that's the current hole right now. That's in there, and we have to make it thick enough to go around that. So for that, we're gonna use our cork reamer. With this reamer, you can see it's tapered. So it's tapered similar to a rod blank, where the fattest part's on the bottom and it gets thinner as it goes up. So we're gonna do that. This is right here. This is the bottom of the rod blank, and this is gonna be the thickest part. So you're gonna try to make a perfect match, and what we're gonna do is basically glue this on with epoxy. And we're gonna fast forward this right. Boop. All right, so as you can see now, we've got the rear seat falling all the way back. It's a little snug, but it covers and then some. So I don't know if you can see that. Ooh. Hey, that's cool. So cleaning off this cork dust, so that way when we throw some epoxy down, it has nothing to ruin its grip. Regular 5-minute JB Weld epoxy. So again, you got a 5-minute set time, so working kind of quick because it cures fast. Doesn't matter if it's spun one way or the other. I like to put it right about flush, and that's because I've got this cap here and it gives it a little meat to hang on to, but you're not really getting much action out of the end anyways. So as long as it's covered up, I'm okay with it. This reel seat, what you want to do is mark about how long the reel seat is. And then what I like to do is mark the edge of it, because that's going to be the determining factor in how far you go. So you want as much support as you can get with this reel seat. There's a lot of tension on that. All of your force from the line is pulling, and you're getting torque on that reel seat from the reel and the line itself. So I like to mark the edge, and what that is signifying is this furthest outside point of this tape line that I just created is that's where this reel seat's furthest point is going to go. So I'm going to build this rod blank up to fit that gap. Perfect. So that is a nice snug fit. So we're going to mix the epoxy, the same step as the first one, just a little more of it. And you're mixing it, you're going to see it cloud up together. It's all going to look the same, but we're going to coat these arbors first. And then with the remaining epoxy, we're going to fill in the blank in between the arbors. And it should lift up just about enough to create a bond with the reel seat. All right, so before it sets too much, we are going to put the reel seat on. So I like to spin it, because what you're going to see there is that overflow is going to keep pushing back, where it can sink into that next gap. Hopefully coat, which worked out about perfect. Going to keep going. And that last gap should be just about, I like to rotate it a couple times to try to even it. And then when you get to that last arbor, it should be, boom, just about done. But then I'm going to align it with my spine. Well, that's nice. So it's important while that reel seat's drying to not bump it at all, because that's going to be in line with the spine. If it twists at any point, your reel is not going to line up with how you want the guides to lay out. So I put that to the side. I let it sit. I don't like to sit it turning. But while we're waiting for that to dry completely, which should take 5-10 minutes, I'm going to start reaming this cork. Beautiful. Alright, so that's what it's going to look like. Alright, so this next step, I am going to be gluing on the tip top. I'm using ferro cement. So what you see me doing here is cutting up the ferro cement with that X-Acto knife in small enough pieces that actually fit inside of the tip top. Once you get all your pieces cut up, you're going to put them inside of the tube, and then the next step is going to be melted down. So the key here when melting the tip top down is, one, to keep the rod blank close, as this stuff settles kind of fast. But then two is you don't want to heat it up too quickly, so don't put it directly in the heat. Keep the heat off to the side. As you can see, I've got my fingertips on the metal frame of the tip top, so that way you can feel if it's getting too hot or not. But you can start to see that epoxy liquefy. Once it starts to, it'll dissolve and fall within the tube into a liquid form, and then you can put it on the rod blank. You don't want to get that tube too hot, the metal on the tube, which is why my fingers are there, because you don't want to damage the tip of the blank. But once you put it on, you have a couple seconds where you can rotate it into place. You want to center that so it is in line with the spine. So the next step is going to be to wrap the guides onto the blank. To do that, you have to first file down the guide. You see me using the Dremel here to get the brunt of the work done, and then you'll see me switch over to a smaller file where I can get the fine detail. You want to flatten out the bottom edge of that so it accepts the thread, but keep it smooth. The biggest part of this is do not allow spurs on the back end. Make sure that's nice and smooth on the blank facing side. Once you get all the guides smoothed out, we are going to tape them on, remembering to keep it in line with the spine. So because we have the tip top and the reel seat in place, we're going to center this in line. I like to tape the guide on the high end, wrapping from the low end up. That way the thread sits nice and flush. You can do it the other way around also. Just know that it might take a couple tries if you don't get that flush seating. It also doesn't matter if it's just aesthetic purposes. The layout for my guide spacing is going to be in the description below. Feel free to check that out, where I will have the exact size of the guides I've got and the spacing between them from the tip top. When wrapping, I like to start from the bottom, about 1/4 to 1/8 inch below the guide. First couple wraps are going to be loose, and you can snug them down with your finger. Wrapping nice and tight, you want to be basically thread to thread here, no gaps. You can use your finger, or they do make bushing tools that you can push the thread down with if you're working at a slower pace like I am here. You just use your hands. They also make wrapping tools that help. Use your preference there. Big things to watch out for here is where the blank meets the guide. When you touch the foot for the first time with the thread, you want to watch out. If there are any sharp edges, that thread's going to cut pretty quickly. Once you get it going, you can get a good cadence and work it out to where you're moving pretty quick with the wraps, and you can keep usually a pretty tight wrap on it. Making sure sometimes when you have those first initial wraps on the guide, you can twist it. I like to do after about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of wrapping on the guide. I like to make sure it is nice and straight, in line with the reel seat still and the tip top. Before you get too far, you're going to want to make sure you center that guide in between the tip top and the reel seat. It's a lot easier to do it early rather than later. So fast forward here, you can see this guide is almost completely done. When you still have roughly 6 to 7 wraps before you're at the end of the guide, you are going to use this. I have fishing line here. It's a 10 to 12 pound test. You can also use a thread puller. You're going to put that loop up towards the eye of the guide with the 2 open ends down towards the butt. You're going to wrap over it, those between anywhere 6, 7, 8 wraps. Basically, however many you need to get to the end on this. It'll come with practice. But once you get towards the end, you're going to cut the thread as you see me do here. Pull the thread through that open loop, and then you're going to pull the 2 open ends of that loop down. And what you're doing is you're securing the thread so it's nice and tight, keeping the wrap there and solid for when you finish it. So once you get all the guides wrapped, you can go back through. You're going to clip the excess, making sure they're all nice and straight in line between the tip top and the reel seat. Once you got the guides all cleaned off, loose dirt or dust from on the threads, excess thread, everything like that, you are going to wrap the guides. So it's on the rod dryer. I mixed flex coat high build 1-to-1 ratio on this, and the key with this is you're going to keep the air bubbles out, so you want to mix it nice and gently, and you can add some heat to get that out too. When actually applying to the threads, I like to do a pretty generous coat on the first round. As soon as I get it mixed up and I start, I'll put a decent amount on to where you do not see the threads anymore. It's a nice shiny coat, but not a lot of buildup. I don't like it. I don't like my guides really bulky. I like just enough on there to where there you can see there's a coat, there's protection, but it's not super bulky or blobby, so to speak. So I'll usually start from the middle. I don't like to work too far on the outsides of the guides just because that's where I can push the excess. So I'll put a decent amount in the middle of the thread. I'll wrap it up. You'll see me spread it here. 2 big things. One, you want to make sure the outsides of the threads are covered. This includes the gap between the blank and the guide itself, where the eye is, up towards the high end. And then this also includes
about 1/16 of an inch down below the bottom end of the guides. So once I get done with that initial coat, I will go hit all the guides and then go back through to make sure it's nice, even, everything's covered the way I like it, and it's balanced. So once you get them all coated, you can leave the rod on the rod dryer. It is going to spin. Some coats take longer than others, depending on light, high build, that type of thing. This one you can usually leave for about 6 to 8 hours on the rod dryer, and then you can remove it, let it dry another, I like to be on the safe side, 24, 48 hours, and it is ready to use.
Hey, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Again, if you make this blank or have any feedback, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Really looking forward to using this rod. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. My goal is to post videos every Friday. Sometimes it doesn't happen, usually depending on how the fish are biting, but that's the goal. So appreciate you watching. Thanks again.